everybody. Welcome to the Hallmarkies podcast. And we are here to talk about 2 more episodes of All Creatures Great and Small. This is season 3, episodes 1 and 2. And we love this season so much, love the show so much, and excited to talk about these 2 episodes. And I'm film critic Grace Wagner, and Michelle's here.
Hey everyone.
How's it going?
Yeah, I'm so hyped to talk about this season.
I know.
I just hope it lives up to my expectations because I just remember messaging you as it was happening, and I don't even think
Yeah.
we'd like confirmed that we were going to be covering it on the show yet.
Yeah.
But I was just it's so good, Rachel. It's so not to make you feel bad that you couldn't watch the episode yet, but I was I was just
Rubbing
like,
it in.
it's so good. It's so good.
Yeah, because
This season
season
is
four,
just
season four is starting soon over there in the UK.
yeah, yeah.
Oh, so jealous. So
I
jealous.
imagine it's going to be within the next week or so. They tend to
Oh.
just sort of spring it on you. Um,
Hmm.
so
Yeah,
the
it's
trailer and all that's out. So I'm guessing that it's going to be within the next couple of weeks because they have to get
mhm,
it done for the Christmas episode.
yeah. Well, and it's such a swoon-worthy show, so you want to talk about it with your friends and stuff, but at least none of my friends in real life watch this show. My friend Jen does actually, but I don't know, just nobody that wants to talk to you about it. So I was like, even before we were covering it, it's like, Michelle, oh my gosh.
Yeah,
So,
I'm the same. There's not many people um that have mentioned this show, and I don't really see write-ups of it.
yeah.
And I came across a lot of things today of that being nominated for an award, and I was like, oh, at least somebody's recognized it. It's a
Because
great show.
yeah,
I
because
mean,
there's
obviously, they must realize that people love it. It's getting into its fourth season.
yeah.
So they must know that people are watching and tuning in. And obviously, it might do really well as on sort of is it Masterpiece? It's on over there or Acorn?
Yeah,
Not
yeah, on
sure.
PBS. Yeah. It just feels like it should have the same kind of hype that Down Abbey had, if not more so.
Yeah, like that just became more of a sort of pop culture sort of thing.
Hmm.
Um, where people that didn't turn watch sort of period dramas were
Yeah.
watching that. Um,
Well,
but
this
yeah, it
is
definitely
this is
feels like this is so
sweeter.
superior. Yeah,
This is
yeah,
sweeter. Yeah,
yeah.
definitely better, but
There was way more scandal and and Downton
yeah.
Abbey. It was the two sort of really awful. God, I can't remember their names. I'm so bad with the names in Downton Abbey. But yeah, the two kind of awful butlers,
Oh
the one
yeah,
butler and the
Thomas.
one maid, Thomas and
Oh yeah, I forget the
partner in
maid's name.
crime.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
she was
O'Brien.
awful. Oh, Brian, oh, she's awful. Yeah, so I think that was more sort of on
Yeah.
Twitter and social media and things. But yeah, this one definitely deserves. This is just pure comfort TV.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, the first episode we're going to talk about Second Time Lucky. And it's spring 1939 as the period drama returns for a third series. Tristan is now a qualified vet, and James enters a new stage of his life with Helen. However, with war looming, all have to consider their purpose in Derby and beyond. So overall, what do you think of this as far as a premiere?
Yeah, it was a really good premiere, and it was also just, you know, the whole sort of setup of the wedding was so fun.
Oh,
Um, and I think the fact that they had Helen sort of, call off a wedding before, I really liked the way they sort of played that up on her end, and also
mm-hmm.
James's nerves of the actual wedding itself. Um, I thought they played that really well in a way that it was like I was never personally worried that anything was going to happen. So it was nice to just sort of see all of their sort of nerves play out. I think
Yeah.
as the audience, you're pretty secure in the fact that the wedding's going to happen, and so it was just sort of a fun, um, really fun on her end, and also just a really great storyline for James in terms of just who he is as a person. Like he won't quit on anything.
Mm-hmm.
Um, even when it gets to the point where there's nothing else that can be done. So yeah, it just really highlighted the type of person he is. Um, But yeah, I really like this episode.
Hmm.
Uh,
Yeah, there were so many good moments, and normally I people know that I'm not a big fan of wedding movies. The problem that most of them have is you end up worrying about stuff that just doesn't matter at all, like to the actual marriage, or to like things like, so where's somebody gonna sit, and are the flowers gonna be perfect, and the just stuff like that, and it's just, that's not for me. And what was great about this is that the wedding was almost, it was just sort of almost an afterthought, as far as like, we never got any time spent about worrying about her dress, or what the chapel was going to look like, or any of that. It was all about their relationship, and making sure James actually got there because of how good of a vet he is. And Helen's kind of past, and her maybe embarrassment of having gone through this before. That kind of stuff. That's interesting. That's character stuff. That matters to the characters. And so that's why something like this is so, I'm not made of stone. I like weddings. I like love, but the wedding movie is usually not for me. I don't know. How do you feel about that?
yeah, I'm the same. I don't mind it in a TV show when it's not,
Hmm.
multiple episodes leading up to the actual wedding. Although we did have that in this, but in terms of, it was a very quick engagement.
Yeah, and it was
Um,
very little actually about the wedding.
very little. There's certain weddings that stand out, like Mary and uh uh again, I'm just like so bad with the names in
Matthew.
Downton Abbey. Matthew, yeah, Mary and Matthew in Downton Abbey. That was like a big one, and
Yeah,
that engagement was probably one of my favorite engagements ever on TV. It was like
yeah,
on
that
the
was very
Christmas episode.
good.
It was so good.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah,
it's not if it's a Hallmark movie and it's about a wedding, I'm not going to watch it. I'm
yeah,
just not. It's just not for me. I've never wanted it's not the type of escapism that I really seek out.
yeah.
I've never wanted a wedding for myself, so
Mm-hmm.
that also sort of removes a little bit of it's not something I really want to see
Mm-hmm.
depicted. Um, it's not something I would sort of lose myself in, but
Yeah.
I do like it's portrayed in this that it was, we saw Helen have this big extravagant almost wedding in the first season, but this one it was very just her family, James's family, um,
Mm-hmm.
and the vet practice, and that was it. It was
Mm-hmm.
a very sort of like it was very sweet and romantic, but it was also very sort of matter of fact of this is just a step in our relationship. Um, so yeah, it wasn't like a huge thing that we had to, go over. And again, there was a lot of things that had happened in terms of wedding dress and things like that that we'd already seen in the first season with Helen.
Mm-hmm.
So I
Mm-hmm.
like the fact that they didn't repeat that in this
Yeah.
one.
Yeah. Yeah. All of that, I agree. And ho, ho, ho. We'd like to take a second and thank our sponsor for this episode of the podcast. It's the Hallmarkies Patreon.
Do you love Hallmarkies podcast, especially at Christmas?
Do you enjoy the holiday previews, recaps, interviews, and bonus episodes?
If the answer is yes, please consider supporting the Hallmarkies Patreon. We need your help to do what we do both during the Christmas season and all year round.
But not only do you help a podcast led by strong, independent women by becoming a Patreon, you get to become a part of the Hallmarkies family.
Starting at only $2 a month as a patron, you will have access to our Facebook Patreon group where we talk about the movies, shows, and more all year.
We also have many monthly patron watch-alongs with guests like Lacey Chabert, Natalie Hall, Paul Campbell, Mary Lou Henner, and more, giving their behind-the-scenes details of their films.
As a patron, you also have the chance to provide input into the podcast and even join us at different tiers.
So this Christmas season, spread some cheer to the Hallmarkies Patreon and become a member today. You won't regret it.
Go to patreon.com/hallmarkies to learn more.
That's patreon.com/hallmarkies. Just saw how this marriage is going to be impacting all the characters. And that's what I care about is how it's going to how this new relationship is going to impact the characters. And you have Siegfried saying that that it's very irresponsible of them to go on a honeymoon. And he says that he's the marriage is a big step and shouldn't be taken lightly.
Yeah, and it's the fact that it was so funny that it was literally a week that we find out in the next episode it was only a week.
Yeah.
Like he's freaking out over. You think they were going like world traveling for 2 months, like
Right. Well, and then he tries to pretend like he doesn't really need James as a partner. At the same time, he's like, "You're leaving for a week." It's really funny. And then the great little scene between Helen and James where he says, "I never imagined this is where we'd end up," and she says, "Yes, you did. Yes, you did." So sweet. He's like, "Oh, I guess." And so his parents are coming for the wedding, and so then he throughout this whole episode we've seen James looking at the recruiters,
yeah,
and he's having very mixed feelings, and because they are needed for the village is because they're vets, they're not required to conscript, but they can volunteer, and so
yeah,
that's something that's kind of looming over everything.
yeah. And there was sort of like an overwhelming sense of duty.
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely feel like there's also this line, this sort of foreshadowing line of, a sense of duty is going to be the death of him one day.
Yeah.
It's such a good line, and that's true for I'm sure many men, and women now that are having to have got that sense of duty. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I do like that the way that they've done it, and the fact that it's just a part. If you're going to tell a story that takes place in this period of time, you can't ignore real world events.
Unless you're a when calls the heart.
Unless you're Wrinkles the Heart. I mean, imagine they'll have storylines where a lot of children will be coming to Darrow Bay for
That's
shelter.
true.
There'll be a lot of, I
That's a good
imagine a lot of
point.
storylines like that. Yeah. Um, so it'll be interesting the way it plays out because it is going to be a big part of next season as well. Maybe they'll get some hints in the Christmas episode, and yeah, so
That's true. You have the kids um with the numbers, the gold that were sent to
yeah.
the country, like
Hmm.
Paddington in
Yeah, like
Paddington.
yeah. One of the most recent sort of remake of, well, I don't even think it was a remake. It's a continuation of the Railway Children. They
Mm-hmm.
had that,
Mm-hmm.
sort of
Mm-hmm.
storyline as well. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I imagine that'll be sort of a place where a lot of children will get
Yeah.
sent.
Yeah. That makes sense. That's a good point. And so then we have the sweet scene between Jenny and Helen on the roof, and it was such a nice little like mirroring back because of course you had Helen and James' first kiss on the roof,
Hmm.
and so to have her with her sister, and her sister's like, "Can I have your room?" And I don't know, I just thought that was a really touching, sweet little scene. Sweet
Yeah,
sisters.
yeah, and it's going to also be a thing in this season of like Helen finding her place.
Mm-hmm.
Because she is still, working at the farm, but she also is, living at Scaly House as James's wife. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's sort of an interesting period of time for women. Because
Yeah.
I imagine there's a lot that she would, want to achieve, and things
Mm-hmm.
that maybe were sort of closed to her, um, before she married James, are sort of open up to her a little bit more.
Well, and
Now
she
that she,
doesn't really have like a job, is he like, because she's just been, just working on the farm. And so, what does she want to do? I think she talked about how she wanted to go to school or something like that in previous episode, but I
hmm
might be getting
yeah,
but yeah, so it's interesting to see her journey. We learned that she's evidently a terrible cook.
yeah, awful. Like, be fair, like the little stove that they have and that little bed set is not great. Like that does not look good. But those
Yeah.
eggs were like those were like frisbees. Those were not
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
for dreams.
Would you say
Like
you're
even
a good cook or not a good cook?
I would say I'm a good baker.
Oh,
I'm not a
baker.
good cook. I don't think I've got the imagination for cookery. I can follow a recipe, but I wish I was one of those people that can just sort of like eyeball things and just kind of confidently pick things up and go, oh that, I'll add that in, I'll add this in,
Mhm.
and I'm not that type of cook. Um, but yeah, I can follow a recipe, just I mean, I've actually had a week off and I'd made like a bunch of different soups and things like that. Because there's like a guy on TikTok that's sort of he started his autumn soup season.
Oh.
He done it last year. He just started again, and I think he's doing a lot of like Asian inspired ones. So
Hmm.
things like lentil soup with like an Asian twist and things like that. So I made a few sort of soups and froze them for
That's smart.
um. So yeah, that type of cooking I'm fine with, but yeah, big extravagant things, ugh, no, not for me.
I'm okay. I can, yeah, like follow a recipe, pretty well for the most part. And I enjoy cooking in spurts. I'll have
Hmm.
like a time where I'm really into it and making a lot of stuff, and then it's more the cleaning that I struggle with, cleaning up more, and especially if I get my house clean, I'm like, I don't want to mess it up, so I like don't cook for as long as possible. But I do. I particularly like certain recipes, and I have a lot of fond memories of cooking when I was younger, because it was like if we were going to have to do a chore, like I would definitely always want to do the cooking. Like that was way better than the other stuff. And we would have these cooking contests between me and my siblings. And that is one of the happiest memories of my childhood, is these cooking contests. And they were quite elaborate. And my parents would give like a small cooking appliance to the winner, even though all of us got something. So there was really no winner. But we it was a great idea. It was a great spot of parenting, because not only were we all doing it together, which my brother and I especially didn't like to do much together. We were all doing something together, but also we learned like tons of skills through doing
Hmm.
it. I learned how to make pasta. I learned how to make just tons of different stuff that I wouldn't have learned how to make otherwise. And it was like a win for my parents because they got all this good food. But I remember I got a bread maker one year, and that was very exciting.
Yes, a bread maker during the pandemic and just
Oh,
haven't like used it during the pandemic and not since.
yeah, so good. There's nothing better than that smell of home baked bread. Oh, it's the best. From the newest sensation in contemporary romance comes a delightfully heartwarming holiday story that's perfect for fans of Rayanne Thane, Denise Hunter, and Debbie Maycomber. Art buyer Charlotte Moore is given the chance of a lifetime to be head buyer for the esteemed Wallace Gallery's Christmas Charity Gala. But when she arrives at the auction, after the most prominent pieces are all bought up, in a panic, she bids on the final painting, an unsigned landscape she's nearly sure her boss will despise. To save her job, she finds herself in the beautifully festive New England coastal town of Seabreeze, the setting of the painting. When a nor'easter blows through, she's stuck at the adorable Cove Hill Inn, all decorated for the holiday and brimming with Christmas magic. Get your copy of The Christmas Promise by Lindsay Gibson today, wherever you shop for your holiday reads. That's The Christmas Promise by Lindsay Gibson. I I'm okay, but I felt for Helen.
Even worse knowing that there's such good foods like literally downstairs.
Right. But James, he is doing this tuberculosis testing, TB testing, and uh this becomes a kind of a point of contention for him and Siegfried.
Yeah.
Because it's very profitable to do the TB testing, but it's also Siegfried is worried that it will turn the farmers off.
Yeah, because even Helen sort of warns him against that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think she is a good person to have in the house because she is a farmer who, and was about to sort of inherit a farm. And it's been in her family for generations, so she does have that mentality.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, she is very like the farmers will turn against you because if there's even a sniff of it, then they have to close down the entire farm.
Yeah.
Um, and that obviously is can cripple a farm because they are very much you know I would say like paycheck to paycheck, but that's the sort of back then times sort of version of that. Like
Mm-hmm.
they're not like making tons of money. They're barely keeping afloat. Um, but yeah, something like this would just totally cripple them.
Mm-hmm.
Even just like the hint of like there was a TB outbreak nearby in a nearby farm, people are not gonna go to the sort of next farm for meat and milk, and the fact that it can get into the milk as well, it's really scary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we see that next episode. That when they contaminate milk. But you have this dog, Chansey, is at their house, a German Shepherd dog, and there's the ring, and this poor ring goes through a lot.
Yeah,
Chansey
goes to the
eats,
whole dog.
yeah, it's the ring, and just that back and forth was really funny between
Yeah. I just
them
thought like
all.
the interaction between Tristan and Siegfried at
Yeah,
the actual wedding was hilarious.
it was
Like
so good.
the looks between them of like you're on your own. Like I'm done with that.
But it was also so sweet when Siegfried tells the story about him and his wife and how he gave her a string for the ring when he proposed because he didn't have one, and so then in the wedding when he gives James a string ring, it was just so sweet.
Yeah.
It was so sweet.
Yeah, and
Uh,
it's very sort of them in terms of like the sort of things that matter to them is more the sort of the actual act of the wedding and not the sort of superficial things of like the jewelry and the dress
mhm,
and the shoes and James's. He's about to get married in wellies at one point. Yeah, that stuff doesn't really matter to them.
yeah, exactly. And so he's at this house working on the cows, and then this cow has hurt his leg,
Mm,
and so they're like, "You need to leave, you need to leave," but he has a hard time like leaving this animal, and so then Tristan and Siegfried come, they go to get James, and turns out the cow has I mean, Siegfried calls it very quickly that is an incredible pain. You need to do the right thing with the cow.
yeah, sort of down a bank, and there's just no way to get the cow up without sort of physically lifting it up, which they can't do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and even then, it's not going to be able to walk on it. It would have to walk on a splint, and then it's just, crossing your fingers and hoping that it's going to heal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this type of stuff, like we had this in Heartland as well. Mind we sort of had this moment where we thought they were going to have to shoot a horse, and Ty sort of steps in, and he's got the medication to sort of do it medically. And sort of put the horse down in that way. But yeah, it's really brutal to sort of see on screen.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I thought it was an interesting juxtaposition because you have Tristan who keeps looking at the conscriptant, the soldiers and everything, and then even that other young man at the farm who does
Yeah.
end up actually shooting the horse. I mean the cow, and so and the fact that Tristan can't do it, and
Mm.
there's this juxtaposition with everybody becoming a soldier. I thought it was kind of interesting.
Yeah, sort of looming over everything, and
Mm-hmm.
he can't bring himself to do it, but yeah, this guy that's young boy that's sort of signed himself up. He doesn't have to. He's one of the protected sort of um, a farmer, so he doesn't actually have to sign up.
Mm-hmm.
It's not required of him, but he does it just out of a sense of duty.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely a sort of harrowing moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so then they finally get James in the car, and he like is changing into his suit in the car, which I thought was really funny. It was
Yeah,
very
there's
well
like
done.
no space in that car to do anything, let alone get changed into a
Yeah.
three-piece suit.
Yeah. He runs into the church saying he has Siegfried's shoes on, and I mean, it was all just so well done.
It was so funny and so well done and
Hmm.
kind of perfect for them.
Yeah. And you also have Mrs. Hall, who's is fussing over James, and Tristan says, "You have to find someone new to mother hen." What's this? Just cute. And uh, and uh, and then there's also a conversation between Helen and Mrs. Hall, and Helen says, "Were you nervous about anything?" Anything after the wedding. And so I thought that was a refreshing scene. Sweet.
Yeah, yeah, it's a really sweet scene, and yeah, I think all in all, this wedding was just perfect the way that it was
Hmm.
done.
Hmm.
And just all of the little interactions, and
Yeah.
yeah, it was the perfect amount for someone that isn't into big weddings.
Yeah. I also really liked the conversation between Helen and her dad,
Mm.
and him saying, "I'm not going through that again."
Yeah,
I'm not
yeah,
going
she
through
sort of
that
plays.
nonsense.
Yeah, yeah, I do like the fact that she's sort of comfortable enough that you know, there's been a few little digs at her for,
Hmm.
leaving, calling off the wedding and leaving someone at the altar and that kind of thing. But yeah, it was nice to sort of see her have fun with it for once.
Hmm. Well, and she's like, "Well, what about the chickens?" And her dad's like, "The chickens will be fine."
Yeah.
Which was really cute. And and then we do get a scene between James and Siegfried about the volunteering. He says, "What we do is far more important than any war."
hmm Yeah, I think there'll be a big thing of Sigrid not wanting them to go to war because he's obviously lived through World War One, which we'll see in the next episode, like what
Yeah,
he had to go through.
right.
But yeah, he's got a huge sort of sense of protection over Tristan and James.
Uh-huh. So we finally get to the wedding and the traditional vows.
hmm
And I just loved that he had it all memorized for rich. It's a richer for poor, traditional
hmm
vows, and that he had it all memorized was just the best.
Yeah, and it's even more traditional than normal. It's like the one that you sort of see at the royal weddings. It's that sort
Hmm.
of the vows. Um, I give you my troth and all those sort of things.
Oh yeah.
It's sort of word for word the royal weddings.
Hmm. To heaven to hold to this day forward. Yeah, it was great, and they couldn't even wait for the kiss. They just went
Yeah,
for it.
I love the priest so much. It's just sort of like stressed out that James wasn't there yet, and then it happened so quickly. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, and so then they come back from the honeymoon, and Siegfried has put James as a partner plaque on the stoop,
hmm
which is very sweet. It's very nice that there's gonna be a partnership, and Helen and James says, as long as we're together, it will be perfect. Oh.
Very funny.
And they're so in love. It's just great.
Yeah.
All right. So then episode 2, called Honeymoon's Over. James struggles to get Siegfried to let him share responsibility now that he's a junior partner at the practice. With Helen's help, James learns how lucrative the Ministry of Agriculture's bovine TB testing program could be for Skelsdale House. So yeah, a great episode. Again, we learn that Helen is a really bad cook. But I did like their cute little setup upstairs. They made it like a little apartment, and they just can't keep their hands off each other. It's really good.
I'll say, I do feel bad that that's been up there this whole time and Tristan's living in a cupboard.
True, that's true.
Tristan has literally been in a cupboard this entire time and there's a bed set upstairs. Like, that's so mean.
That's true.
I
Yeah,
will say I did find Siegfried really difficult to take in this episode, but I feel like they
yeah,
maybe did that because they know that the next episode's coming.
right.
It's a big Siegfried episode because
Mhm.
yeah, he does go a little too far in this
Well,
episode with
it's not reasonable, like him making a partner and then paying him less than Tristan.
yeah,
It makes no
yeah,
sense.
yeah. It was like he's sort of done this thing, but didn't realize the real world sort of consequences of doing this
Mhm.
thing.
Yeah,
That he just thought it was like a plaque on a wall. I
right.
didn't think that, James was gonna come in with all his own ideas and
Yeah,
which isn't crazy because that's sort of who James has been from the beginning. Um but
right.
yeah.
Well, but it was funny when he's like, they're probably enjoying themselves more than you think.
We'd like to take a second and thank our sponsor for this episode of the podcast. It's the Hallmarkies merch store.
Are you looking for that perfect gift for the postable, hardy, or Hallmarky in your life?
What about getting that t-shirt or hoodie that will help you stand out at your next holiday party?
Now is the time to check out the Hallmarkies merch store.
Full of festive designs by artists like Jessica Miller, Carrie from Hallmark Comics, and more.
You can even have more than just shirts, but totes, cell phone cases, notebooks, mugs, and more.
And it isn't just Hallmark. We have designs for Anna Green Gables, Man from Snowy River, The Nanny, and more.
Every purchase at the merch store goes to help support the podcast and allows us to make the great content you know and love.
There are frequent sales, so go to tpublic.com/stores/hallmarkies or see the link in the description.
That's tpublic.com/stores/hallmarkies.
And so then we have Mrs. Hall telling Siegfried, you need to start treating James like a partner.
Mm-hmm.
And so then there's this woman, farmer, whose calves are struggling. They have the
Mm-hmm.
gastroenteritis, and James just cannot figure it out, keeps going, and she loses one calf and the other one's sick and more, and her daughter got married and they haven't spoken really since.
Sorry?
What's that?
Our daughter, you say?
Yeah, her daughter. Yeah,
That's
wasn't
a
it?
sister. I think it's a
Oh,
sister.
sister. I thought it was daughter.
I think
Anyway,
it's
yeah,
her.
someone like
I think
that.
it was her and her sister, sort of, a little bit like Helen and Jenny were running the farm.
Mm,
And then she got married and went over to the next farm.
hmm
I think it's bad enough that she sort of left and went to another farm, but it's the next farm over.
Yeah. Well, and so Siegfried gives James all the accounting work to do, and he's it's all a mess, and so he ends up putting Helen over it, which was brilliant. And that did remind me of my grandparents. My grandfather was a great businessman, very successful, and my grandma did a lot of the accounting. She was really good at organizing things and organizing data and making that. And so I feel like that's often something that would happen in these traditional marriages, traditional households.
Yeah, and she seems to be very good at it as well.
Hmm
Um, but yeah, this is probably where I struggled with Siegfried the most. I just thought he was so awful to her.
Yeah.
Like she's trying to help, and literally every stroke of the pencil, he was like, yeah, he was just being so horrible in this
He's
episode of like
Yeah, even when
she's
she
trying to
finds
help.
uncashed checks, you think that would be very exciting.
Yeah, yeah.
Money.
And she's like trying to organize it, and he's going over and moving other like moving like bits of paper. Like you're obviously
Uh-huh.
making it more of a mess. I know you've probably
Yeah.
got your own system, but yeah, it was very petty.
Yeah. But I did love the scene where they're talking and where James, Siegfried, and Tristan are talking, and and Siegfried tells James to not be too soft on Tristan, and Tristan's like, "I'm right here, I'm right here in the room." That was a really good scene, I thought. But it makes sense that someone like Siegfried would really struggle with having a partner. That would
Yeah,
be hard for him.
yeah, and it seems like it's just been him for such a long time.
Hmm.
But obviously veterinary is becoming a bigger thing. So yeah, if they want
Hmm.
to, you know, be the main sort of veterinary practice in that area, they're gonna have to actually
Hmm.
listen to James and get x-rays and get the TB testing and all of these different things that might not be the most popular, but in the end it's gonna make them the most
Hmm.
money.
You had some really cute scenes between Gerald and Mrs. Hall
Mm-hmm.
in this episode. He comes with his dog and he tells her that he was engaged once, and he
Mm-hmm.
says, "I should have fought for her." And he says, "It takes real courage to fight for your happiness."
Mm-hmm.
It's very sweet. And then he also says, "I believe we all end up exactly where we are meant to be."
Mm-hmm. I'm
So
a bit torn. I'm a bit torn on them. Like they seem
mhm.
really, really sweet together, but it just feels like Mrs. Hall just isn't there yet.
Hmm. Well,
Um,
it does feel like this is just sort of a stopgap. Like this is not like end game
no, no.
for Mrs.
Maybe
Hall.
for Gerald, yeah, maybe for
Maybe for
Gerald.
Gerald. But it was cute. It was some nice little moments. And then the farmer loses the other calf, and Siegfried checks in and says James has done everything that he should.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, "I only hope James, my partner, has news from the lab that can shed some light on it." And
Mm-hmm.
it turns out it doesn't. The lab results are inconclusive.
Yeah, they were sort of hoping that it would be, not hoping that it would be lead, but something like that.
To have an answer
Um,
at least.
to do some kind of treatment. Um,
Hmm. Yeah, I thought this woman did a good job in her role as this. You really felt she loved these animals.
yeah, yeah, she played it really well, and also just the sort of, you know, kind of the way she sort of won James over, um, or the way James sort of won her over, sorry,
Yeah.
because she does sort of overstep and call Siegfried down, and she sort of sees James as a sort of city guy, and doesn't really understand Araby. And I hope that that doesn't last for too much longer because at this point he has been here for a couple of years.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah, that's true. So Tristan looks at this dog, this Dalmatian dog, and the owner's pretty flirty with
hmm
him. And then she ends up bringing it in to the practice, and he's like, "Wow, this place is a mess. This is not good." But the dog is choking.
hmm yeah, he sort of has been gotten in trouble a little bit, a
Hmm.
couple of times in this episode for not having, his tools sort of sterilized and ready to go, all of his equipment clean and tidy.
Hmm.
And to make it worse, like this is someone that he, I think, trained with at veterinary school, or like her dad's a vet. Like she has
Something
some
like that.
training yeah, she has some training as well. So it's another veterinary practice coming in and seeing just an absolute disaster.
Hmm.
Not good. At least, it sort of gets Tristan. Um,
Clean
it makes him
up.
a little bit clean up, get him a little bit more self-aware. But yeah, I do think they
Hmm.
have good chemistry, so we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, yeah, and it was a beautiful dog. And I was surprised that they didn't put one of the cones.
Yeah, I don't think the cones are like a thing now yet.
Oh, really? They
Maybe they
didn't.
are. Yeah,
Well, I guess they didn't have
we'll have to
plastics in the
Google.
same
Yeah,
way back then, but still, because wouldn't the dog eat at the stitches?
yeah. You think it would scratch at that? 'Cause I don't think a bandage is even gonna stop
No.
them from scratching.
Yeah.
Like I had to get my dog like when he was he had that gastroenteritis. He had to have like an IV in his paw, so they'd let him come home, but they said like if there's no improvement and he doesn't eat, then we'll have to keep him in again. So we're just going to leave the IV in, so don't have to like put him through the whole trauma of having to get that put back in. And I'd woken up in the morning to take him back into the vet, and he'd literally ripped it out his arm. It was awful.
Oh.
like he'd ripped all of the bandages off, and that's him with like stuff on it to stop him going near it. And he was also like high on drugs as well, so I have no idea how he managed to. Well, there's a way with an animal.
Yeah. Yeah. And so then James signs them up for the TB testing. They get the package in the mail that makes Siegfried upset, and you get like one of their biggest fights they've ever had.
Yeah, definitely one of the loudest.
Mm-hmm.
If that was happening, I would not be in that house. I'd be like, I'm out. Yeah, bye.
Yeah. And so then Mrs. Hall tells Helen, "This is my home and it's your home too, so you should start treating it like it." And so then they have breakfast downstairs, and Helen's like, if that's what's happening. And it turns out that they figure out that the milk that the lady was giving the cows was contaminated, poisoned.
Yeah, they sort of
Because of
have these. Yeah, they
it's
have
like a
these.
remedy or something that she got.
Yeah, I think they have these sort of people that go around and sell these sort of concoctions and, like
Yeah,
definitely old wives type of stuff of like it's not actually
like a
any sort of,
peddler.
yeah, peddler. It's not any sort of scientific sort of medication or anything like that. But it was so sad. It's like she's um very open about the fact that she can't read. And her sister sort of took care of all of that.
Hmm.
So yeah, the fact she didn't read the fact that it, was a poison. It's on the back of the bottle that it's a poison and it shouldn't get into any sort of um food or anything like that. So when the sort of, what is it, the horns are coming off, they're falling off into the milk, contaminating the milk, and then they're consuming the milk. So yeah, it was something that was,
Yeah, it was sad.
very simple, but it was causing all of these issues. And I think she ended up losing two calves.
Yep. Yeah. And that's they tell her that it's not too late to make amends with your sister, and for if they fall, the one shall lift up the other.
Mm-hmm.
That was very good. And then it ends with this family meal of them all eating together, and that is one thing as a single that I do miss. That just the daily ritual of family meal.
Mm-hmm.
I do miss that. I uh, and just all the daily rituals of family that that's just not the same when you live alone.
Yeah, same.
Hmm.
Yeah, occasionally I'm lucky enough to have a few family meals like a few times a month, but yeah, it's definitely like because of my work schedule as well. Like I even when I'm, with people, it's just like my schedule's so different. I eat so much later than most people,
Yeah.
and yeah, it just never works out.
Hmm. Yeah, but they're doing a great job building this dynamic between the characters and making their relationships build and grow. And like I said, I don't mind if characters behave in selfish ways. It just it has to make sense for the character. It has to be reasonable that character in this situation would behave selfishly. And so it doesn't feel like just randomness. And in this case, Siegfried's behavior does make sense for his character, the character that they have built up. It's frustrating, like seeing it in a way, but it's what makes the show work in the end, because you get to see this whole character arc. You get to see him. That's why you're so you find the character in the end so endearing, because you've seen them grow, you've seen the petty moments, you've seen all that. It just makes the show work.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's so funny, like even when you compare him to you know, the other show that we cover, Heartland, when you compare him to somebody like Tim,
Mm-hmm.
oh,
Yeah.
that is a character that I don't think justifies it. His behavior doesn't justify a lot of the things that we see. Like,
Yeah.
I don't
Well,
think the storytelling
especially
is
in
as
certain
strong.
arcs, like when he proposes to, I think it was Janice.
Yeah,
Like there's
he's
certain
proposed to a
things
few
like that.
people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like just to be selfish. You're just like, come on, Tim. Yeah, that's a good comparison. And I mean, even that is like so much, I think is more nuanced than a lot of what we get on in One Calls the Heart, where it's just like they're so afraid to have the characters have flaws and to grow and change and go on a journey with the characters, and that can be frustrating. And or I felt the same way in Chesapeake Shores, just a lot of the Hallmark shows, they're just so afraid to have a character with flaws. And in this case, you go on journeys with the characters, and that's what you want in a television show.
hmm And the
Mhm.
writing is so strong.
Yeah.
You know, even in
And
an episode
acting.
like this where I found Sigrid to be frustrating, it's
Mhm.
like he comes around in the end
Yeah.
much all the time, and the writing is so strong that, you know, when he starts freaking out about, you know, James making decisions, it's like we know from earlier episodes why that's happening. It can be frustrating in the moment, and it is, but again, you have to sort of take a step back and say, like, everything I've learned about this character up to this point, you know,
Yeah.
this makes sense for that person.
Yep.
Whereas you can't say that for every show, unfortunately.
Yeah, exactly. Well, let us know what you think of these two episodes. Did you especially love the wedding as much as we did? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section or on Twitter. And Michelle, where can people find you?
On Twitter at Michelle Armenson.
Great. And you can find me at Rachel's Reviews, all of our social media, iTunes, YouTube, and on Rotten Tomatoes. So check that out. Also, make sure that you're following the podcast at Hallmarkies Pod, Hallmarkies Podcast, all of our social media. And if you are listening on iTunes, please leave your ratings and reviews 5 stars. That really helps us a lot. And if you are watching on YouTube, please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. That helps us out also a lot. And most of our viewers on YouTube aren't subscribers. And so if you're in that camp, please subscribe, because that really helps the algorithm a lot. And like the video, and check out the patron group and the merch store. And we are going to have, for the first time in All Creatures Great and Small, piece of merch that I just had, I guess, fit commissioned, and we're going to get on there. So you definitely want to check that out. And thanks so much, everybody. We'll talk to you later. Bye.